It is live. I hope everybody out there is having a great morning. And this is the 5 minutes pre to Paragon's Financial Intermediary School, which I'll be loading some docs. Oh, if you would please log into our Hangout and see what comes up on your screen. The focus on the Hangout today will be two things. One, we have the Paragon Prospect Experience, which we like to think of as the Paragon Factoring NBA on one sheet. And then two, our web expert of over 10 years, Paul Jawakam, will talk about how to best utilize a website in your local area. What do you see when you log in?
Good.
Now, did you hear me?
I'm good on silence, so no feedback.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure that was... Okay. I wish I could do a split screen. You know? Now, this is being taped to YouTube also?
Yeah.
After the fact, can you pull that up and edit up this front stuff?
Try.
Okay.
You should be able to button down on YouTube videos if you use a normal YouTube video.
Okay. Oh, there's 8 people viewing already. I know there's a few people on already. Thanks for coming to Paragon's Financial Intermediary webinar. And we'll get started promptly at 11 o'clock. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Paragon Financial's Financial Intermediary webinar for May 1st, 2015. I hope everybody's having a great beginning to their summer. It's a lovely day here in Florida. What you see on, first, we're going to primarily talk about two things today. One, on your screen is the Paragon prospect experience. If you're on paragonfinancial.net and go to the broker page, if you go to the bottom, there's PDFs of the files we share. It's the Paragon questions for prospects. We have crammed every bit of factoring knowledge we can into one sheet, and I like to think of this as a mini factoring MBA. So what I thought we would do today is talk about this sheet. So it's on your screen, but you can also, as I stated, find it at paragonfinancial.net. Go to the broker section, and it's the very first PDF at the bottom of the broker section, where it says questions for prospects. And a couple things I'd like to talk about on this sheet. First, if you go down to the second and third, where it says industry and sales per month, it talks a little bit about what Paragon's wheelhouse is. And that is, you'll see Paragon PFG, Paragon Financial Group short. We like all but third-party payee, medical and construction and consumer. However, we have sources, just like you. We generate 300 leads a month, let's say, from our website, from our broker network, which we appreciate, from bank turndowns, but probably 75% of that 300 does not fit our box. It's medical factoring, which is its own world. It's construction factoring with lien rights and pay when paid, which is its own world. It's merchant cash advance. They're a retailer. They're too small. It's a small trucking. So we have referral relationships to multiple other ones. So one of the first things I can recommend, for those that have been doing this for a while, you probably already have it. If you're a newbie, you don't. But you're going to need 5 to 10 factor, merchant cash type sources that the whole idea is to monetize every lead you get. But like, for instance, Paragon, we like companies that are doing 30,000 to 3 million a month, or can get to 30,000 pretty quick. Our unique selling proposition, which is another sheet in the broker, I like to tell people what we're good at, is one, we're very startup friendly. So if somebody can get to 25, 30,000 a month in sales relatively quickly, their business can be 10 minutes old. We don't mind. We also credit insure. We're a firm believer in using credit insurance as a tool. So Paragon has an insurance policy that protects our clients' customers, the account debtors, against bankruptcy and insolvency. So we pass the features of our credit insurance onto our clients as credit protection. That's another great tool to use. Another tool we use to sell is prospects with tax issues. I cannot stress enough that, whether you're in Wichita or Phoenix or Atlanta or LA, that you be known to your sphere of influence as a go-to resource for businesses with tax issues. Paragon, with our expertise, we're very good at negotiating third-party agreements and subordination agreements with the IRS so people can get funded. Right off the bat, if somebody has unpaid taxes, whether there's been a lien placed or not, it's difficult for a lender to give them money, as it puts a cloud on their receivables. So, another area of expertise for us is businesses with tax issues. I'm going to jump around a little bit. One thing, and if you go down where it says, remember, you can have invoice factoring without PO funding. This is critical. One of the, if you type PO funding in on Google or Bing, Paragon comes up pretty high. And one of the reasons is we're an invoice factor. But what we sell, invoice factoring, and what people look for, PO funding, is two different things. PO funding has doubled to tripled the search volume on Google. So you should realize that. And you can be a marketer, A broker, or like us, with our own money, a funding source of invoice factoring, 100 years from now, 99% of the population will not have the words invoice factoring in their vocabulary. So that's why many people are looking to finance their PO. Well, have this clear in your head, like the sentence says. You can have invoice factoring without PO funding, but you can't have PO funding without invoice factoring. And what I mean by that is someone like us who does both sides, these deals work backwards. They start with a credit worthy customer. So people say, hey, Chris, I can buy t-shirts for 100 grand and I've got them sold for 150 grand. Great. But more importantly, who do you have them sold to? You know, if you're selling to Walmart and it's a true sale, not on consignment, great. If you're selling to mom and pop grocery stores where I can't get credit insurance, that's tough for me. So remember, all deals work backwards. One of the reasons we can help people less than 2 years old, bruised credit, losing money, 100% client concentration is we look at the credit worthiness and the credit insurability of who they're selling to. You know, we have clients selling to Walmart, to the Department of Defense, to Comcast, to Time Warner, to the city of LA, fill in the blanks. But right now, I don't have any clients selling to Sears or Kmart because I can't get credit insurance on Sears or Kmart, which tells me the world is banking on them filing bankruptcy eventually. So these deals always work backwards, and remember that. The other thing, the difference between PO funding and invoice factoring, somebody sells 100 grand worth of t-shirts to Walmart, I can factor that invoice. They don't want to wait 45 days. You know, I verify with Walmart, yep, we love the t-shirts. Yep, we're going to pay you, Chris. Great. Then I wire you 80% of the 100 grand. And then you get the 20 grand less our fee. Let's say it's 2% when Walmart pays me. So that's invoice factoring. PO funding is, what do you all have the money to buy the t-shirts to ship them to Walmart? Well, we can literally buy the t-shirts for you or use our credit to entice your vendor to ship. You know, you can go to the website and there's a sheet in the broker packet that talks about PO funding versus invoice factoring, but a vendor guarantee, cash against docs, letter of credit, so we can entice. But again, if somebody wants money against the PO, well, it all starts in who they're selling to. Another thing is, most of you probably also sell deals to merchant cash. If you go, Paragon's website has 600 pages on it, and it pretty much says over and over and over again what industries, what size we like. We like wine importers. We like staffing companies. We like people selling to the government. But I still get calls from restaurants and retailers. Well, of course, as a factor PO funder, we only fund B2B and B2G, business to business or business to government. A retailer is a B2C, business to consumer. Even Paragon gets those type leads, which we have reciprocal relationships with some of the large credit-worthy merchant cash advance companies. They send us factoring business, we send them that. So there's times, smaller deals, highly leveraged, business to consumer sales, they don't fit our box, so we cheerfully send them the merchant cash. Our philosophy at Paragon should be your philosophy. Every lead, every prospect is precious, and how can you best monetize that? We're going to try to quickly size up the deal and get it funded so Paragon can pay you. But as a courtesy also, if we can't fund the transaction, and we'll tell you why, we'll try to send you one of our reciprocal sources who will help you too. And that's why I say you're probably going to need 6 to 10 funding sources so you can monetize every lead you get, and you're not at the wrong place. I touched upon credit insurance. I think credit insurance, which is credit protection to our clients and to you, is a wonderful selling tool. Less than 20% of accounts receivable funding companies utilize credit insurance. So that means 80% of our competition does not. Well, why is that? One, it's expensive. We spend over $100,000 a year on credit insurance premiums. Two, many factors, AR companies, they don't qualify. Paragon's 21 years old. We do over 100 million a year. We have a very strong balance sheet. So that's one reason why the large credit insurance providers are comfortable with Paragon. The other thing I briefly mentioned is using tax issues. If you Google business financing with tax issues, Paragon comes up very high. And one of the reasons is many, many, many companies got in trouble over the last 6 years. Well, they took hits, linens and things, Circuit City, General Motors, Adelphia. You can list the Radio Shack recently, Sears and Penny's, Kmart coming. There were so many bankruptcies, small businesses took hits and it hurt their credit. Or they did not have the money to pay taxes. Unpaid taxes kills most other lenders. It's something we aggressively look for prospects in that area, which means you should. Again, I can't stress this enough. When you're out and about, let people know you offer credit protection, and you also have solutions to people with either unpaid taxes with or without the lien. And if you type tax liens, again, you'll find tons of information on our site that you can utilize. If we look back to the sheet, be it on your screen or where you downloaded it, one of the problems we run into, about 10 lines down, you'll see in the middle column, you'll see hidden liens, hidden liens, hidden liens, hidden liens. Well, the reason is many times people say, oh, no, I have a line, but my invoices, my accounts receivable is not encumbered. Or, oh, no, that merchant cash, they didn't follow UCC. Well, my guess is at least half the applications we get, there's a lien on them, from a legacy lien from another lender. So, one thing, as you can see to the right of hidden liens, it says get application and then research. We want to get the deal off the street so that, we have first chance, or you have first chance at funding, so we can all get paid. But, any previous companies, previous factoring, banking relationships, any taxes, judgments, or liens. One of the selling features of factoring is not based on the personal credit. And that's probably about 90% true. But one of the reasons we look at personal credit, we don't care so much about their credit score. It's nice if they're 700s, but if they're 620s or 580s or whatever, we're not credit score driven. What we are driven by things on their personal credit report that could encumber the receivables. One of the basic tenets of invoice factoring is there's a good invoice from a creditworthy client that can be sold to us. Well, it can't be sold to us if the seller's in bankruptcy, because bankruptcy could put a cloud on that AR. If a tax lien has been filed, if taxes have not been paid, if there's judgments related to taxes, we have to have a free and clear invoice to purchase it. So that's why, many times when people say, well, he's got a line of credit, but it's not on his assets. Well, that's typically not true. 90% of the time people think they're not encumbered, they are encumbered. So I would get that out of the way. Now, that doesn't mean we can't work around that. From time to time, we take out merchant cash lenders. We take out lines of credit. We even have subordination agreements. Our downstream lender, we have a line of credit. Our downstream lender, we have an intercreditor agreement with those. Occasionally, they have a client where they have a 400 grand line of credit, and they're not comfortable giving them any more money, but they'll carve out some of the AR. And one of the easiest way to do that is client specific. We have a client that's doing military work for Boeing, and our bank specifically carved out the Boeing receivables so we could fund against them. So there's lots of ways to skin the cat to get around that. But knowledge is power, and we need to know what that is. One thing, let's see, I'm looking to our little itinerary that was on the website. We talked a little bit about merchant cash. Oh, one thing about merchant cash advances, they usually take the last 6 months of bank statements. They see how much quality and quantity of cash flowed through their checking account. And there's some formula. They give you 20 to 50%. So, they give you 10 grand or 50 grand, or it can add up. Recently, I saw a deal where he had $400,000 out in merchant cash advances. And if you computed the interest rate, it was close to 100%. And every day he was being ACH $4,400 out of his business account. So you can imagine 22 times a month, $4,400. That's $100,000 a month. He only had $500,000 in AR. There was not enough money there. If I bought all his AR, it wouldn't even cover the payoff on the merchant cash guys. Factoring, when you think about it, we typically cost people from 1% to 2% a month. But besides cash flow, 80 to 90% advance, you get credit protection, you get AR management. A credit manager costs 50, 60 grand a year. If you run your business correctly and let us become your de facto credit department and your working capital and AR management, you can make money. It's very difficult to make money with a merchant cash advance. As they get, merchant cash advance is the crack cocaine kind of business lending. And the situation I just talked about, his probably only avenue is to file bankruptcy. There's really no way getting out of that situation. So I personally think there's a coming bubble in merchant cash advance because it's very loose credit standards, meets very high cost of funds, and that doesn't sound like a winning long-term formula. So, but we see, in smaller deals, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 50,000 a month, merchant cash is very seductive because a lot of times you can get the money in 2-3 days. While with the factor, it can take 5 to 10 working days. Now, we offer daily funding once you're set up, but we have some credit underwriting. We have some work to do. We have some UCC searches. So it takes a little longer. So people sometimes spend double, triple, quadruple the cost of funds because they want money now. They want that instant gratification, or they're afraid. But merchant cash, once you're sucked into it, it's hard to get out. So I would just be careful. I tell you one thing I find interesting. I get a call almost every day from a merchant cash lead generation firm who's got 5 to 20 to 50 to 100 people calling on merchant cash, and they want to diversify in invoice factoring because I think they feel it in their bones too, that something good's not around the pike for merchant cash. So merchant cash. The other thing is, the second thing on our itinerary is know the difference between PO funding and work in process. Well, we know invoice factoring, you deliver the goods or service, you can invoice, we factor the invoice for you. PO funding, hey, I don't have the money to buy the goods, so I would like you, Chris, you Paragon, to use your credit to buy the t-shirts, to buy the seafood, to buy the whatever, so I could create an invoice. Great. But what's WIP? WIP stands for work in process. What if you have to put components together? Let's say, for instance, you're selling an engine, but you need a crankshaft, and you need a header, and you need lubricant. Well, what do? Well, we have a sister company that does WIP funding. Well, they don't give you cash against the PO, but they'll buy your major components. They'll buy a popular industry is people building wreckers or ambulances. They're pre-sold. We can pre-approve their credit. They know there's going to be a good invoice to factor. So a WIP funder can buy the chassis. They can buy bearings, they can buy motors, they can buy, it can't be too many parts, but they can buy parts for specific orders. They buy the parts, they give them to them, they finish it, they deliver it, we factor the invoice. Some of the proceeds goes to the WIP funder, some to our clients, and then they get the balance less our fee. But Paragon, through one of our sister companies, has excuse me, has WIP funding available. And there's also, if you just type in WIP, WIP in the search box on the site, you'll see information. Let's see, we talked about credit insurance. We talked about tax issues. I tell you what we're going to do, we're going to switch gears here a little bit. You know, we only exist if we generate prospects, if we generate leads. So through our broker program, through this webinar, through our own websites, through me, I try to spend as much time as I can getting in front of bankers, and I can't stress that enough. And also, we have a sheet just for banks and credit unions. I don't know where you live, but in a 5 to 10 to 20 mile radius, depending on the bank density, every branch manager, every small business lender should know you and should be sending you turn downs. A good financial intermediary, a good broker can make a living off bank turn downs. And if you go to our one page, I think if you go to the bottom of the footer, we have the bank credit union program. That's a very good sheet, and I send you an example sheet of that in the broker packet. So if you're a person that likes to get out and press the flesh, so to speak, bank turn downs, you can make a wonderful living. And to be honest, when I'm not here talking to brokers, I try to be out in the field cultivating bank relationships in our geographical area. But one thing, it's kind of, you know, we've been on the web since 96, I think. And then we have some sites been up and running since 98. A lot of our marketing dollars is on web leads. You know, brokers find us on the web, prospects find us on the web, bankers. So what I'd like to do, Paul Joachim, who's been my web guy for over 15 years, I'm going to let Paul talk. And we're big fans of locality and specificity. So I'm going to let Paul talk a little bit about how you use the web to generate your own business in your area of expertise and geographical area. And here comes Paul's slide now.
How's everyone doing today? All right. So what I recommend is that all brokers have their own blog. And what we talk about here is specificity and targeting your local region. So you don't want to go out and you don't want to be targeting too much. There's so much competition out there, and everyone's targeting all the broad strokes. You don't want to go too broad. You want to go nice and specific and targeted within your zip code, within the cities around that you're already out by foot and doing your thing. So to set up, some of you might have a blog already, some of you might not. So if you don't, we like HostGator. So I would recommend going to like HostGator or GoDaddy. They've got all kinds of nice, simple tools for you to be able to successfully go in and set up a blog on your own. They've got really good customer service, and if you don't know how to do it, you could always go in and get help from them. When you set up, you have to choose a URL. That's your domain name, and I highly recommend that it's targeted to you. So let's say you target South Florida, I would recommend a URL like southflorida-factoring.com, that type of thing. And then once you've got your blog set up, I recommend a two-part strategy. So the first part is to go out and find classified ads. Find your local newspaper and start participating in those and comment. So what you would do is, let's say, for example, the Miami Herald. You go to the Miami Herald and you set up a profile. make sure that when you set up the profile, you have your URL pointing back to your blog, so southflorida-factoring.com, and go ahead and participate. And what will happen is Google will see that, go to Miami Herald, it'll see the article, maybe it's about business, maybe it's about financing, and it'll look through on the comments and it'll see your comment and it'll follow that link back over to your blog, and it gives your blog credibility. The same thing with local classifieds, classified sites like Backpage, Craigslist, stuff like that are very geolocated. They're targeted specifically to you and where you're doing your work. So local events, yellow pages, really anything that's local, you want to be able to set up, and you want to ensure that it's got your URL back over to your broker blog. Okay, and then the part 2 strategy is creating that perfect blog. Let me go ahead and flip this over. So this next slide is called the anatomy of a perfect blog. So what you want to do is you have to choose the title. And the title, in this case, I put Miami to California. Let's just say it would be like Miami to Fort Lauderdale. So that's really what you want to do, is you want to target your specific cities in the title, and then you want to target the topic. What are you talking about? You don't want to talk about invoice factoring. You want to talk about something very specific about invoice factoring. In this case, it's cut flowers. And then what you want to do within the blog itself is you want to do a little bit of research. It doesn't take a whole lot of time to do this research, but go find out about whatever you're talking about. Go to an industry association that your blog is associated with and get some facts. Incorporate the facts into your blog and talk about that. Talk about a case study. Talk about something that you've recently been involved with that's unique and different, because there's so much competition out there and you've got so many people writing about these topics. You don't want to be generic, because Google will take that generic writing and it'll just negate it. You don't want to do all this stuff in vain. You want to make sure that whatever you're writing is really making an impact, that it speaks to the audience, and that it speaks to Google. And by speaking to Google, you're doing unique content that's worthwhile to your audience. And the better you do that, the more Google's going to pay attention to you. Let's see, and then something else that is really crucial is the call to action. You have to make sure that the call to action is at the end of every single blog that you do. So you don't want people just reading it and then just going away. You want to at least give them the opportunity to give them your number, give them a form, give them some way to be able to, your cell phone, some way to be able to contact you. And then something else that I've always liked to do is optimize an image along with the blog. So you can see that I've actually added words, keywords to the image itself. And I don't know this for sure, but I do believe that Google can scan an image and read it and see if there's any relevant text on that image. And then when I create the image, I save it, and I'll save it, for example, I'll name it financing floral industry.jpg. So I'll actually name the image to be able to match the entire topic. So again, it's very specific. It's about locality, and it's about getting in those facts and something interesting and unique. And the idea here is to create blogs maybe twice a week. This is a marathon. This is not a sprint. You can't just go in and create a couple blogs and expect Google to be able to pay attention to you. It's all about being consistent and longevity. So choose something that you're comfortable with in terms of how often you're going to do it, and then just go and make it part of your routine. So let's see. Flip back over here. Something else that's really new and really important. Just this, actually, it's May 1st now. So this past April, Google did a big switch with the way that they're going to rank sites in terms of mobile. Yeah, I don't know if everyone knows this, but 60% of online traffic now comes from mobile. So it's a big deal. So we have to make sure that your blog is mobile friendly. Some blogs are already built in. I would go ahead and, when you've got it set up through your host, ask them, is it mobile friendly? If it's not mobile friendly, there's plugins like a WordPress plugin that you can go and you can install. There's other third-party software that you can incorporate, such as Doodah Mobile. So if you Google Doodah Mobile, you can pull that up, and it's really easy. It's simple to set up, and what's going to happen is, if your website is Google friendly, Google's going to rank it higher. I mean, it's really that simple. And if it's not Google friendly for the first time, or mobile friendly for the first time, Google is penalizing the websites, so you can actually lose a lot of ranking. And again, you don't want to go through all this effort and create great content and do your research, and not have your sites ranked well. Yeah. So I think that's actually a really good overview of what I was going to talk about. So yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, Paul. One thing I would, one thing about when it comes to websites, some general stuff. All our sites are WordPress. They're easy to update. We can do blogs on the fly. One of the things I can add to what Paul has probably already said, there's a cumulative effect. Invoice factoring itself is a very expensive word, but so it's, there's lots of factors, there's lots of lead generators attacking it. It's nice. We like to say we're white hats versus black hat, a web term, a paragon. It works out that the industries we like, we like doing PO funding and invoice factoring for the wine industry. We like staffing. We like guard. We like helping tax issues. So just the sheer fact that we put information about what's called a long tail keyword, invoice factoring wine, business financing with tax issues, just so happens that what we like to share with the world, both Google and Bing give us credit for that. So Paul and I both said it, but specificity, be an industry problem specific expert in your geographical area. One, and again, geographical locality. If you're in Wichita, you should be the invoice factor with Wichita that likes tax problems. So it's a lot easier to own a 5, 10, 50, 100-mile radius than like us. We've got clients from Anchorage to Key West, from San Diego to Maine. So, but our goals here are broader, deeper.
And not only is it easier, but it's more effective. It's more effective to be very specific.
Yeah. And this is a very good, we like flower importers. South Florida, where we physically are, is a stronghold of that. So, like, for instance, if you type in invoice factoring flowers, there was times we were like 1, 2, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10 in Google.
Yeah, it's complete dominance.
Yeah, just because A, our competition didn't attack it, and B, we had a lot of good information about it. I think while I have everybody here, excuse me while I switch the screen just slightly, I am going to pull up. I mentioned our bank program, and I'm a firm believer that, very few people walk into the banks these days. Bear with me. Very few people walk into the banks these days and talk to the branch managers, the assistant branch managers, and the local. There's just not that much of that interface anymore. So bear with me while I pull up this file. Of course, it's inside the broker packet. So if you have our broker packet, you have it. The Paragon Here's the Paragon Credit Union and Bank Program. I'm going to take a step back. My personal and Paragon's philosophy on selling, it's not really selling. We're more consultative sales. We want to help people. What's everyone's favorite subject? Themselves. So first, we're blessed at Paragon. We're 21 years old. There's a lot of good, positive information about us. We do over 100 million a year. We have a very strong balance sheet. So, the first impression on us is decent if people check us out. But more importantly, I want to convey that we know your pain. We understand your situation. So one of the things, Invoice Factoring Wine, Florida, Invoice Factoring Wine with tax issues. People like to know you understand their situation and understand their pain. Well, one thing, there's a lot of information on our bank credit union form here, but much of it has to do with individual pain. And there's a page dedicated to this on the site, and there's in the broker packet, you get one of these sheets too. So much of it's about their problems. Think a small business goes into the bank. The bank does a cursory look or just a cursory conversation with the entrepreneur. And they go, less than 2 years old, bruised personal credit, one client, losing money. They know in 30 seconds whether they can help them or not with a line of credit. They hate saying no. They like, does anybody on this webinar enjoy telling someone no? No, I hate it. I want to help people. Well, one of the big selling features of a bank is that at Paragon, or even one of our reciprocal relationships, we can help their client, but they get the depository relationship. I like to think of Paragon as the farm system for the banks. And what I tell the bankers and the prospects is, great, we're going to fund you, and now I'm getting ready to wire the money to ABC Bank. And they go, but I don't bank at ABC Bank. Well, you need to get there and open an account up with Pam or Joe or whoever, because that's who I'm going to wire the money to. Banks want to capture depository non-risk relationship. It's hard to do if they can't give them a line of credit. That entrepreneur is going to end up at the bank who will give them a line of credit. So that's one thing about Paragon is, one, we fund someone, we take care of the referral source, and if they become bankable at that bank who the lead came from, we'll cheerfully hand them back to the bank. Another thing is, if some of you have worked in banking, some have not, if you're the branch or the assistant branch manager of the bank, every morning you get the most pleasant report, and it's the NSF report, which means it's all the people bouncing checks. So a fertile prospecting list for all of you and for Paragon is what businesses are bouncing checks. They're having cash flow issues. So bankers, startups, you can't help them. Concentration issues, cash flow problems, bouncing checks, all the reasons the banks want them gone or can't help them. There's a very good chance we can. The other reason a business is probably bouncing check, if they have accounts receivable, recently a bank sent me a client that they couldn't help, or that they were kicking out because they're losing money. Their accounts receivable was a mess. Way too much at 90 days, way too many write-offs, way too much late. So not only do they need the working capital that Paragon offered, and they desperately needed the credit protection because they had taken some hits, which we would have hopefully protected them from, they needed the AR management. Do you have the proper paperwork? One of the features in Paragon's unique selling proposition is the Paragon famous soft touch. People will call us up and say, hey, I don't want you calling my customers. I says, well, you've outsourced your accounts receivable management. We're not calling to beat them up. We're calling to make sure that proper invoice, proper back backup documentation, proper form, proper AP cloud portal, that they have all the information so they don't miss a billing cycle. If any, the typical DSO, the days outstanding, which means the days big companies take to pay little companies in the US, is 46 days. So on the average, if you're selling to the Walmarts, the Kohl's, the Department of Defense, the state of LA, the state of California, fill in the blanks, Comcast, on the average, they take 46 days to pay you. DSOs historically go down when clients start to fund with Paragon. And it's not because we're pounding people to pay sooner. It's because we catch the mistakes. When we fund the invoice, when we verify, and by the way, one of our goals is same-day funding. And I think this is another critical selling point. Once you're set up with Paragon, like for instance, 8 a.m. this morning, a batch of invoices will come in. Our very good account execs, our very good relationship managers who are all college educated, been doing this for a long time, they're verifying the invoices. Are they in the system? Do you have the paperwork they need? When are they scheduled to be paid? Informational. Once we verify the invoice, boom, our goal is to wire out by 4 o'clock every day. And we run about 98, 99%. So something to sell is same day funding. Invoices in the morning, verification through the day, and then we wire the money at 4 o'clock. So I can't stress enough that through AR management, through the Paragon famous soft touch, DSO money out will go down. So it's been only 45 minutes. Let me look back to my itinerary. We talked about merchant cash. We talked about PO funding versus WIP funding versus invoice factoring. I think everybody knows the difference between invoice factoring and PO funding and the magic words. You can have invoice factoring without PO funding, but you cannot have PO funding without invoice factoring. Paul talked about how to generate leads through your own website, and I'm sure that begged many questions, which we'd be happy to talk to. You can email us, you can chat with us post this webinar. Using credit insurance, which is credit protection to our clients and you, as a marketing tool. Using tax issues as a marketing tool. And I'll add industry specificity as a marketing tool. If you're in parts of wine or Oregon or Washington, wine country, we love funding wine. We like funding microbreweries. We like funding tequila and vodka. Typically, the hot industries where there's growth, we like to fund. Another thing, we love to fund government. We've been funding government contractors for 21 years. The nuances of dealing with the government is its own world. Many lenders, many banks exclude government receivables from their availability. If they're on a borrowing base, they just whack out the government. There's something else too. If a bank won't fund against the government, we can enter creditor with them, and then we could advance against the government. And there's not, wherever you're sitting right now or driving or however you're listening to this, every article of clothing, everything you can see as you swivel your head around, the government buys that and everything else. There's not an item the government doesn't buy at the federal, state, local, city level. So, to be known as the credit insurance guy, the tax guy, the government guy. And our sweet spot, again, is 30,000 to 3 million a month. 100% client concentration is great as long as we can get credit protection. There's specific industries we love. Tax is not a problem. And I'm trying to think what else. There's lots of information pulled up on your screen on this bank credit union sheet. If you see a term here you don't understand. One thing I'll bring out about this, SBA 7A is a very popular program. but they only give the borrowers in the SBA 7A, they only get 10 to 20 cents on the dollar for their inventory and receivables. It is so much better if the SBA lender will carve out the AR, because we're going to give you 80-90% against your AR, against your invoices. So another a ripe area for you to work in is all the SBA lenders in your area. When they write a loan, and there's some SBA lenders who will subordinate. We have reciprocal agreements with a few SBA lenders. Well, they'll do the term loan, and then we'll carve out and do the AR. You can get them more availability, which means they have more working capital. So I think that is us. We've this only ran 46 minutes, but it was lots of information. I would peruse the question sheet, the bank sheet, and Paul's sheet. And after you do, if you have any questions, please contact me. Again, I'm Chris Curtin. I'm the National Sales Manager at Paragon Financial. You can reach me at Chris, C-H-R-I-S, Chris at paragonfinancial.net. And also our phone number is plastered all over paragonfinancial.net. Appreciate your time today. And again, take care. Bye-bye.